who is the Democratic Majority Leader.
Gentleman from Maryland, the distinguished majority leader is recognized.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding, and I think this is my first time in a long time of having a magic 1 minute. And so I have some things to say. I was on the Appropriation Committee for 23 years. I came here in 1981. We had between 81 and 95, 10 shutdowns. Those 10 shutdowns averaged 1.9 days a shutdown. The longest one was 3 days. Because of differences, not because of a strategy. In 1995, Newt Gingrich adopted shutting down government as a strategy, as a taking hostage not only of federal employees, but of taking hostage of the American government and taking hostage everyone who is served on a daily basis by the federal government. And the reason I know it's a strategy because it has happened a number of times. The next one, long-term, was in 2013, when Ted Cruz, United States Senator, came over here and talked to a number of members and said, unless the president will repeal the Affordable Care Act, we're not going to fund the government. In other words, unless the president didn't take health care away from Americans, the Republicans would take government services away from Americans and hold hostage the government of the United States. And now, just a few years later, ladies and gentlemen, the Republicans have again taken hostage not only 800,000 people who work for the federal government, expecting them to work for no pay to protect our borders, to protect our seas, to protect our food. And so they've taken hostage the government of the United States one more time. And so we have a crisis. But the crisis is not at the border. There is a challenge at the border. And we need to make our border secure. We are for that. The proposal the president made in a campaign speech, which got a lot of roars all the time he gave it, was, we need a wall, a big wall, a wall along the whole border, a wall that the Mexican government will pay for. It was total campaign rhetoric and demagoguery. It was not a policy. And I agree with my friend from Idaho. Mr. Simpson is the former Speaker of the Idaho House. The far right in his party ran a candidate against him a few elections ago, and they got beaten badly. Thank heavens for that. Thanks to the voters in Idaho's judgment. And I agree with my friend Tom Cole, in part. But if he were here, unfortunately he's left the floor, but I would say to Tom Cole, Mr. Cole, as you ended the Congress with your side in charge, you rejected a bill from the United States Senate, passed with unanimous consent, that would have opened up all of government. And you rejected that bill because the president told you to put $5.6 billion in the bill, which you knew, and I'm sorry Tom Cole's not on the floor because he says, you know this bill's not going to pass, which you knew would not pass the United States Senate, but you sent it anyway. Why? Because the President of the United States told you to do so. Let me remind all of us that we are a co-equal branch of government. We are the Article I branch of government. We are the policy makers of government. Not to sit as stooges and be told by the President of the United States, if you don't do what I want, what I tell you to do, I won't sign the bill. Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday night, the President went on television trying to argue that the American people should continue to endure a painful government shutdown until Democrats give him funding for a border wall that has bipartisan opposition. Democrats and Republicans alike, not all, but oppose this $5-7 billion waste of money on a physical wall along the border. Representative Will Hurd. Now, who is Will Hurd? He's a Republican member of the Congress of the United States. He is a member of the Congress of the United States from Texas. He represents a district which has more border than any other district in America. What does he say? Building a wall is the most expensive and least effective way to secure the border. But the President of the United States says, you don't do that, I'm not playing. And because he's not playing, none of you are playing. I say to my Republican friends, how sad. You were not elected by your constituents to do what Donald Trump tells you to do. You were elected by your constituents to do what's best for them and their country. Senator Lindsey Graham, friend of the President's, Republican, senator from South Carolina, said this: the border wall is probably not a smart investment. But the President has told Lindsey Graham, you're not for my wall, I'm not for your bill, and I won't sign it, and I'm going to shut down government. One person is responsible for shutting down government: Donald Trump. And most of the people he shut down and not paying, they don't have a dad they can go say, give me some money, Dad. Maybe he doesn't know that experience. Opposing a new barrier at the border, acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, listen to me, my Republican friends, said in 2015, you go under, you go around, you go through. What they need is more manpower, more technology, and more willingness to enforce the law as it exists today, he said in 2015. Not a wall. More manpower, more technology, more willingness. That's essentially what Will Hurd said. Senator Ron Johnson, one of the most conservative senators in the United States Senate, said he always thought that the President's wall was a, quote, metaphor. Now, if it is a metaphor for security, we're in. Because we Democrats want a border that is secure, that does not allow people who are not authorized to come into the United States, don't. That people, criminals that want to bring drugs in the United States are caught and prevented from doing so. That people who traffic in human lives are caught and stopped. We're for that. The President's at the border said Democrats don't care about crime, they don't care about human trafficking, they don't care. That's baloney. It is a lie. It is unworthy of a President of the United States to make such an assertion. Senator John Cornyn of Texas said, and I quote, I don't think we're just going to be able to solve border security with a physical barrier because people can come under, around it, and through it. That's why so many Republicans say the wall is not the answer. Ranking Member Michael McCall. Now he's the ranking member of your Foreign Affairs Committee, I tell my Republican friends, Mr. Speaker. But he was chairman of the Homeland Security Committee when he said this, and I quote, a 30-foot concrete wall is a very expensive proposition, and there are a lot of other things we can be doing technology-wise to make it a smarter border that's more effective and more cost-efficient. So don't accuse the Democrats because they're against the wall of being against border security. Your Republican leaders don't believe that. So you ought to stop saying it. They are among the Republicans and Democrats who believe we need a smarter, more comprehensive strategy to improve border security, not just building a physical wall with taxpayer money. President Trump said over and over and over and over and over again Mexico was going to pay for this wall. God knows how any American voter believed that. Now, of course, not surprisingly, he admits that's not going to happen. So let's discuss border security, which is important to Democrats and Republicans alike. Let's sit down and figure out how best to do it. That is a debate on policy. But by the way, my Republican colleagues did not bring the Homeland Security and the border security issue to the floor until December 20th, 11 2/3 months after they took control, or they were in control because it was the last of the session. So they waited 11 months and 20 days to bring this critical issue to the floor. My. And now they shut down the government if we don't do it their way. This is a debate on policy, not politics. That's why I quoted so many Republicans. There's no reason to maintain a dangerous and costly government shutdown while that debate occurs. Let's end this shutdown right now and turn to the real discussion about border security without holding America's workers, their families, and the people they serve, all of our constituents. Let's have a vote in the Senate, which I believe would reopen government. Leader McConnell has a responsibility to do so. Leader McConnell has a responsibility to the Senate and to his oath of office, the Constitution, and the country. He swore no oath to President Trump. None of us swore an oath to the President of the United States. We swear an oath to the Constitution and to preserve and protect and serve our people. On August 24, 2014, Senator McConnell said this, that I am the guy that gets us out of shutdowns. Shutdowns, he said, this is Senator McConnell, is a failed policy. That's what Mr. Simpson said. That's what Mr. Cole, I know, believes. I've talked to him about it. I hope every member here believes that. So my plea is to stop pursuing it as a strategy. Remember, 10 shutdowns that average 1.9 days. Your shutdowns, 21 days, 16 days, and now we're going to have the longest shutdown in history. Because you have taken captive the government of the United States. How sad that it is us who are the enemy of the government of the United States. Senator McConnell, I hope, will bring bills to the floor to open up the government, as he did in December when he sent a bill here, and you would not take it up, my Republican friends. When you were in charge, you were the leaders. You rejected that bill. That would have funded government, kept government open, kept serving the American people. But no, you took a hostage. And government is shut down. The Democratic-led Congress is doing its part. The first day we came here, we passed a bill that was exactly like the Senate's bill, so one could assume that the bill they had passed, when they got it back, would in fact pass. And the Homeland Security we did for a short time so we could continue negotiations in a positive way without having hostages being taken. Last week we passed a package of funding bills for fiscal year 2019, a continuing resolution for the Department of Homeland Security and in order to reopen government and end the Trump shutdown. The Trump shutdown. The Trump shutdown. If Trump said to Senator McConnell, yes, I will sign the bill, the bills would be passed by the United States Senate. No one disputes that. If Trump said to the House members here, Mr. Speaker, they would pass. Trump articulated at the White House that he would not open government until we agreed with doing what he wanted to do. That is not democracy, that's despotism. Because Leader McConnell is refusing to bring up our package, of appropriation bills. They're the very same bills written by the Republican Senate, as has been so often said, and I would prefer that they were bipartisan bills. We are now sending him each of the bills individually. On Wednesday, we passed a bill that would, among other things, reopen the IRS so taxpayers can get their refunds. They paid in more than they owed, and they ought to get it back, and they ought to get it back in a timely fashion. But the folks who are to do that are not being allowed to come to work. Yesterday, we passed the Agricultural Appropriation Bill, which will continue nutrition assistance for those facing hunger and reopen programs helping farmers in rural America. Many of you represent rural farmers, and they're relying on payments from the Department of Agriculture to sustain them, and they're not getting them. We also passed yesterday a bill for transportation, housing, and urban development to restore safety to air travel and keep low-income Americans from losing rental housing assistance. I don't think there's any Republican that wants to see people out on the street because they couldn't make their payment, because they didn't get their payment from the federal government. Today, we are bringing this interior appropriation bill to the floor to reopen America's national parks and restore services to Native Americans and tribal communities. I want to thank the gentlelady, Ms. McCollum from Minnesota, for the leadership she has shown and the work that she has pursued to bring this bill to the floor. I ask my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to vote on the merits of this bill, and I hope that many Republicans will join us. If you're for reopening government, vote yes. If you vote no, you're for continuing this Trump shutdown. I hope Leader McConnell listens to his senators. Senator Susan Collins said this on the House passed bills last Thursday. It would be great to have them signed into law because there's not great controversy over them, and at least we'd be getting those workers back to work. Senator Cory Gardner, Republican of Colorado, added, we should continue to do our jobs and get the government open. I agree, Mr. Speaker. Hopefully, when we vote today, we will have in mind the 800,000 people who are not getting paid, half of whom are working. Hopefully, we'll have in mind all those who are looking for a tax return, all those who are looking for a supplemental nutrition payment so they can put food on their tables, all those who are looking to make sure that they can settle on their house because FHA is cooperating, all those who need a visa's extension or something of that nature. Hopefully we'll be thinking of them, not just of small bore politics of if you don't do what I say, I won't play. Vote for this bill. Send it to the Senate. Senator McConnell, put it on the floor, pass it, and send it to President Trump. I yield back the balance of my time.